Welcome to TippCast by Nina Guardian. Hello, it's myself, Shane Stapleton, and the other Shane Brophy of the Nina Guardian here, talking all things Tipperary. The new season is underway, so we're going to talk heavily about Tipperary and the 20 points each draw against Limerick. We'll preview the next league clash coming this weekend against Cork. We're going to talk about the football opener against Limerick and, of course, the Camogie team as well. Shane, let's go straight into it and the draw against Limerick. Do you see that as a positive result, or do you see it as Limerick didn't start with Declan Hannon, Mike Casey, Keane Lynch, Gearóid Hegarty, Aaron Gallan, and the best Tipperary could do was go 5 points ahead and not be able to see it out?
Yeah, you could say there's an element of I suppose you could take both sides of that argument there, but I think overall, I think at 20 points each draw, I know going down there, I was a little bit nervous, even though Limerick were probably only at half their All Ireland winning team out there. I was a little apprehensive. What we were to face was the last thing you wanted, as I mentioned last week, was a heavy defeat and starting the year on the back foot. But I suppose, 55 minutes gone and you're 5 points up. You will be disappointed to see it out, but not to see it out. Sorry, but I suppose 3 minutes into injury time, and the only likely winner at that stage looked like it was going to be Limerick. So from that point of view, to hold out for a draw was a decent result. On the flip side with Tipperary, we weren't at full strength either. And particularly finishing up, we had a lot of inexperience in that forward line. When Bonner, when Niall O'Meara, when Willie Connors came off and Alan Flynn came off, we seemed to lose our shape altogether from midfield up. And I suppose that was epitomising the very last play of the game when Dylan Quirk launched the ball upfield, and there was actually practically no tip forward inside the opposition 65, and I suppose we were fortunate enough that there was no time left, and the referee blew the final whistle, because Limerick would probably have had a chance to go up and try and win it. But it was a tough fixture to start with, and I suppose not to come away unbeaten is a positive.
Look, we're both Tipperary men. We want to be positive about this thing and think that Tipperary have a chance of bridging the gap with Limerick this year. But there are a couple of things that definitely would trouble you. Creating just 5 chances from play in the second half, not scoring from play in the second half, so 0 from 5 in terms of shots from play in the second half. That has to be a big concern. The one thing you expect from Tipperary with the golden wrists all around the team is that there's going to be no problem creating chances. But even think how many good balls. Bonner spent a lot of the game in full forward. Now I was watching it on TV. You were down there, I think. How many good balls went into Bonner when he was in full forward? Very few. The best chance I saw being carved open in the first half was Seamus Kennedy came out, won a ball in front of his man. I think Tom Morrissey played a beautiful ball for Jason Ford. He caught it on the run and stroked it over. Limerick were playing in a lovely ball all day for their inside line, and Seamus Flanagan got his few points, etc. Tipperary just struggled to create against this Limerick team.
Yeah, I suppose we know with Limerick, they play to a certain structure, and I think no matter who's on the team, they sort of know what's maybe 2 passes ahead, what way the ball is coming in. I just think we're at Tipperary, even we're sort of playing an unstructured game, and it sort of depends on how way a game is flowing. As you say, there was very, very little quality ball going inside, even though our half-back line were probably the dominant line. Our midfield, I think, edged at Limerick's midfield, but the ball going in was it rarely stuck, even though we sort of picked a forward line probably largely on physicality and work rate. At Bonner, Dan McCormack, Niall O'Meara, Willie Connors, probably 4 not renowned scorers. So I suppose maybe it wasn't a surprise we relied heavily on Jason Ford. I suppose we didn't think we'd rely so heavily, and you'd probably hope that Jake Morris would have chipped in with something, but he really struggled. Apart from the goal chance, he looked a bit off the pace. But he wasn't the only one. Noel McGrath came on, struggled to get to the pitch of the game. Dylan Quirk didn't really get to the pitch of the game when he came on either. So I think from early stage, I thought Limerick were the sharper team. That their touch and the quickness of movement, I thought was a little bit better. Whether we just hung in there, we warmed to the task. But I think there's more to come from our guys. I think we've seen over the years once we get crisper ball work done in training, our speed of movement and thought should improve. But if there was one disappointment, it was the fact that some of the fringe forwards didn't really show much. Keane Darcy, I don't think that he even touched the ball when he came on. He might have got one touch. Dylan Quirk looked a bit jittery in possession. I think a couple of times he was just a bit slow off the base. I suppose Mark Keogh got on one ball. In fairness to me, he won the free as well. So for I suppose the 20th point, which ended up proving so important. So look, if you were to say that the new blood in terms of Brian McGrath and Brian O'Mara did well in defence, you would say, look, that the disappointment was that some of the newer forwards didn't take their chance when they came off the bench.
Mm. Do you think you can read too much into this game? It is the first time that the players, I mean, Tipperary obviously were out of the championship probably a few weeks before Limerick were last year, and it's mid-December since Limerick themselves won the All-Ireland. Do you feel like you can read too much into this game? Did you get a sense, even on the sidelines, I'm sure you were up in the high gantry and able to hear what was going on, did you get a sense that this meant much?
I think from Tipperary it probably did. It definitely from Liam Sheedy. You'd know from him being on the sideline over the years, there are certain matches where he'd be relaxed on the sideline and going through the motions, but from the early stages you saw the twitch in the shoulders there, and yourself when Liam is a bit jumpy and on the sideline, it's a big game. And look, I think in terms of basic, I suppose the basics he would have wanted from the game was high work rate. He got that. I think he'd be very pleased with the defensive structure maybe after 15 minutes when they made a couple of tactical switches, and a lot of that good, clean, quality ball that Limerick got in those early stages into Adrian Breen and Seamus Flanagan really dried out there, and it really only took till maybe Cian Lynch and especially Peter Casey came on where they managed to get a foothold in terms of scores in that second half. So look, I'd probably be, if you were to be optimistic, you'd say I'd be more worried if you were too good at this stage of the year. There's still loads to work on. I said that I think in terms of a starting point, I think that they'd have to be relatively pleased, like to go to Limerick, draw the game, and I say Limerick probably finished closer to their championship team than we did. And I think when you look at the fact that only Noel McGrath of the experienced guys on the bench was thrown into the fray, John McGrath was held back. We wouldn't have seen Pádraig Maher only for Brian O'Mara getting injured. So it just gives you the sense that look, winning wasn't the be all and end all. I think he just wanted to get a good performance. He wanted to see certain things in terms of work rate and a bit of physicality and standing up to those Limerick strengths. And I think in terms of those things, he'd be pretty pleased.
Yeah, so some of the players that were tried out, Barry Hogan was given a chance in goals, and I think he did quite well. There weren't too many shots to be stopped for either keeper. Nicky Quaid obviously blocked one from Jake Morris. It didn't seem like it was going to be a shot that was going to rattle the net, given his body position and distance out. Brian McGrath, you mentioned him at full back. Now, Seamus Flanagan, he wasn't on him throughout the entirety of the game because, players switch and all that kind of thing. Brian McGrath, I think, at times, I couldn't really fault him for the points that Seamus Flanagan was scoring because the quality of the ball going in, and you're against a good player who can like he's actually getting better all the time. And actually, I want to come to that in a while too. The Limerick players, to a man, individually, seem to be getting better every year, and that must be down to coaching as much as individual appetite to improve. And you'd hope that that's going to happen with the Tipperary players too. So Brian McGrath then at full back, thought he did very well won a couple of very hard balls as well. How did you feel he did? How did you feel Ronan Maher going out to wing back? He got a couple of points, one of them was a free. Barry Heffernan playing cornerback a lot, at times against Adrian Breen, and that was a sort of a matchup that I suppose, like, Barry Heffernan can play anywhere in the back line really, but it probably wouldn't be the most suitable matchup for him against a jinky guy if good ball is going in. And Brian O'Mara, very disappointing that he's after getting injured, and that might kind of scupper his chances of being involved in the summer. We'll have to see how that goes because somebody else might take the shirt. How did you feel that those guys did?
Yeah, I know we started with Brian McGrath. I thought Brian that the first 2 points Seamus Flanagan got, like, there wasn't an awful lot he could do. Like, the ball that went in was terrific angle ball. He got as tight to him as he could, but of course when Flanagan gets that ball, it's nearly a score at this stage. But look, I think after that he settled down very, very well. He came out with one ball and it seemed to give him a bit of confidence. I think he gave a lovely short hand pass to Ronan Maher and the ball was up the field. The second half I thought he was really, really good. Like, a couple of 50-50 balls went in there to him and Flanagan, or I think he might have been on Breen for a couple of minutes there, and he won he won, I think it was about 3 of them, like just so cool and typical McGrath gene, like just so cool and composed on the ball. I thought he was helped up by a tactical switch just before, I think, the water break. I think it was when Tipp went 6-3 down and were in a bit of difficulty. Dan McCormack was brought to the middle of the field. And more or less as a defensive midfielder, the same role he plays for Borrisley. And I just thought it gave Tipperary an awful lot of solidity, because there was 3 of the, I think there was 3 early long puck outs from Nicky Quaid, and one went down on Ronan Maher's wing, and 2 went on to Brian Amara's wing. And it was a 2-on-1 situation. David Reedy had drifted out from centre forward and all 3 puck outs, and it was a 2-on-1. And of course, like, Seamus Kennedy was sort of left at home. He had to mind the house, and like once Dan McCormack was brought back into the role, he plays very well. He more or less said, "Look, Seamus, I'll mind this section. You go after David." And we saw it with Jason Ford's first point from play when Seamus was released to go attack the ball. He got out in front. Delivered a lovely ball into Jason Ford and was over the bar. So like, it'll be interesting to see if Tipperary go with that Dan McCormack role in terms of a defensive midfielder. I just think he's so comfortable doing it for Borrisley, and I think he can play it so well. Like, he's such a good reader of the game. He's so composed, and he adds that bit of physicality. If somebody comes to that area, if there's maybe a Cian Lynch comes into that zone, or a Tom Morrissey or a Garrod Hegarty, you have an extra bit of solidity there in terms of I think it's something Tipperary will have to think about, maybe sacrificing an extra forward this year to have maybe a third midfielder or a fourth half back, just to have that bit of extra solidity there. Because I just think from the second quarter onwards, maybe for the next half an hour either side of half time, like, Tipperary were utterly dominant in that sector field between half back and the midfield.
Yeah, but then the concern is you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because, you know, Tipperary aren't creating scoring chances, and if you're going to play that extra guy back, then it's probably going to be difficult to do so. And to some degree, Tipperary are probably doing keeping lads back anyway, and justifiably so. Sure, like Limerick, a lot of time when they don't have the ball, they have 13 players, maybe 14 players in their own half. So why would you leave yourself exposed tactically, or let the game pass you by just because you want to say, well, look, we're a traditional county, we hurl the right way? That's irrelevant. You go out and you win your All-Irelands like Kerry did in 2014, playing defensive football when you need to. Now, I'm always afraid of praising Borrisley lads because, the old parish pump politics, but I think, like Dan McCormack is going to remain a crucial lad for the team. And like yourself, I like to see him in that midfield position. I mean, he obviously gets plenty of slagging about his shooting at times, but, he's just so important that he has to be in that team somewhere. But then, like, a lot of the criticism about the half-forward line is that the ball won't stick there either. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul again. I think it's a tough balance, because it's not like Garrod Hegarty's and Tom Morrissey's, and Tom Morrissey actually had a rough game, I felt, but like, it's not like they're growing on trees in Tipperary, and that is a real challenge for Liam Sheedy, because we can second guess his teams all we like, but it is very, very difficult to find that right blend, because we've lots of lads who've got Rolex wrists, but it's finding that blend is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, like, I think from 2 up to about 9, I actually think we're well stocked in terms of options, and also a bit of versatility there, because I thought Seamus Kennedy in terms of centre back held the position very well. Will he be a long-term option for the summer? Remains to be seen. Like, where does Brendan Maher fit into this? Will he play number 4? That's sort of a Barry Heffernan role, where like there's very few teams play a conventional 3-man for forward line anymore. So I actually think that suits Barry Heffernan too, in terms of that floating number 4, where he can get on the ball, and he's a very, very good distributor as well. But look, if there's no reason maybe why Brendan Maher can't play the Dan McCormack role, because look, he knows how to play that position between centre back and midfield, and that Dan could be released back up the field too. Look, I think it was just in terms of maybe it was what needed to be worked on in the night. I know 13 points in place balls, 7 points in play wasn't a hectic return for Tipp, but look, I think in terms of the forwards we select, wasn't a surprise. Like, I think Jason Ford and Jake Morris were probably our only 2 pure out and out scoring forwards we selected. Plus, you're playing against a Limerick team that thrive on not creating or conceding scoring chances to play, and two, if they think they're in danger, they will give away the free. And I know John Kiley was a little critical of the fact that I think the free count was 21-14 against Limerick, but look, they were fouled. They fouled more. Like that was the case on the night. Some of their tackling was a little lazy, like, and okay, maybe there's one or two that were generous to Tipperary, but I think overall, like, definitely the Limerick probably, and it's to be expected at this stage. They were probably just not up to speed in terms of the quality of their tackling, which last year was a feature of their play.
Again, as you were there, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on the structure of Tipperary, both during play and also for the Limerick puckouts. So, and of course, Barry Hogan went short with a lot of puckouts, and this is where I can see Barry Heffernan working as being on the last line of the field, because if he turns and collects short possession, there's very few corner forwards or full forwards who are going to be able to stop him going out with the ball. He's absolutely brilliant at it. Sure, he's 6'4", I'd say, in his socks. And when he carries the ball out, he's going to be able to either strike it lovely because he's a good hurler, or create a hand pass to someone coming off the shoulder. And Cathal Barrett can do that as well because he's so pacey. So I'd be encouraged to see that as an option. I think that's good to have that there. And the same if you put Brendan back at number 4, I think he could do that too. So I want to get your thoughts on that, but also how Tipperary seemed to mimic what Waterford did. Now, I did a video with Sean Flynn, who's a Tipperary hurling analyst last year, talking a lot about puckouts, and we were analysing the way Waterford allowed the likes of maybe Barry Nash and maybe the cornerbacks, probably guys who wouldn't be seen as their, Declan Hannon and Keane Lynch type quality on the ball. Still good hurlers, no doubt about it. But they were trying to give it to the players that they think would be kind of sent down the tram lines, who would be put into tight spots and would have limited options when they get the ball, that they couldn't just set up play the way Limerick like to the centre and they throw the ball around. So your thoughts on that, but also on Tipperary's work rate and hunting in packs and the amount of turnovers that they got, because that stuff definitely was noticeably better than last October, whenever we lost heavily down in Cork.
Oh, definitely. I think after I think when they made the tactical switch of Dan going back, Rob and we really started to win any of the long puckouts that had Nicky Quaid sending down. So after that, Nicky more or less went everything short, and Tipp allowed him to go either 2, 3 or 4 to go with the short puckout, and more or less I know Richard Duncan-Bonner and Niall O'Mara and Willie Connors, they didn't really engage the Limerick guys coming out. They stepped back, they stepped off. Maybe allowed them to get a second pass away, but once it got to around the 45, 65 yard line, Tipp engaged then, and they had a lot of success there to turn them over. Limerick weren't able to able to look up and to maybe play the ball into space, and if they did get a chance to look up, there was very, very few options. The area was crowded. There was Tipp bodies blocking off avenues. Like, there was very, very little of that well-placed ball that we saw in the first 15 minutes after that. I'd say even in the last few minutes when Limerick were coming back, like Peter Casey's 2 points and Seamus Flanagan's couple of points from long range, like, they all came from long range. They sort of came from around the middle of the field, where in fairness to Limerick, they sussed out, look, at the long ball, it's not working. Tipp have that snuffed out, get a few extra bodies in and around the middle, and it worked for them, I suppose. So I think that was around the time Alan Flynn had gone off, and I thought he's such an asset at the moment. Like, if you want Alan to do a job anywhere in that defence or in midfield, he'll do it. I think he's pushing to get himself one of those first names in that team sheet, and there's no doubt about it. Like, he's impressing me every day we go out. I think if going into the game, I think if Liam and the manager team, I think if it's the one thing they wanted to get out of the game is a potential structure if they had to play Limerick again. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went down that road, potentially hopefully with a stronger lineup going forward, hopefully with maybe a couple of more scoring forwards that would be able to keep the scoreboard ticking over. Like, I know we only created 1 goal scoring chance, but look, I think it's 7 out of the last 11 championship matches Limerick have been conceded no goals. So look, that's part of their game plan, concede no goals, and they have a fair chance of winning a game. So look, I think overall, in terms of what Tipperary wanted out of the game, in terms of maybe potential structure going forward, playing Limerick again or playing a Wexford or that type of a team that likes to work the ball out of defence, I think they'll have taken a nice bit from it. Because, like, you think if you're going into if you're looking at the 4th of July when we're playing championship, you're probably looking at Brendan Maher in that team, Pádraig Maher, Seamus Callan, John McGrath, maybe Bubbles if he's back up. It's like you're probably still looking 5, 6, 7 players in that lineup. Hopefully, maybe one or two of the fringe guys will be knocking on the door to get in there. You don't know what the role maybe for Bonner will be. Will he start some games? Will he come off the bench in others? Will there be a horses for courses type scenario in terms of the way to pick a team? And I think this week is the perfect example. I think setting up for Limerick is totally different to what you need probably playing Cork next Saturday night. You probably need a bit of physicality and work rate last week. Next weekend you need a bit more mobility and speed and things like that. So I would fully expect a different, maybe I would say, fully expect maybe 5-6 changes for Saturday night, purely on the basis, I suppose, firstly, we need to get guys game time, and secondly, because Cork are going to offer completely different threats than probably Limerick did.
I just wonder, like those 5 or 6 names that you're suggesting that might come into the team for whenever it's championship on July 4th. I'm not 100% sure that is the way it's going to be. I mean, no doubt 1 or 2 of them will be, especially if they're fit. But it depends on whether they hit the ground running and show form that they didn't show last year. And I think it would nearly be a sign that, well, my concern is that Tipperary will continue to lose the same way if you don't inject some of the younger players into the team. Maybe Paddy Cadell is someone who'll get a go. I expected him to get game time the other day. Perhaps he will against Cork this weekend. Disappointing that Brian O'Mara has gotten injured, of course. And maybe like it didn't happen for Dylan Quirk, and Mark Keogh didn't get into that game that much, and Keane Darcy, I don't think a ball went into him either, to be fair to him. I think you just have to keep exposing these guys, because if Tipperary want to reclaim the All-Ireland, at the moment I feel like it's a bit away. But like these lads with, you know, the legs of 22-year-olds or whatever, you know, you need that energy. You can have a couple of lads who are 30 plus, but really, if you're going to survive against Limerick, you can't have too many of them. You know, it's only 2 years ago that Ger Loughnane was proclaiming this team kind of over the hill. But there does get to a point where having too many of those players in the team does put you over the hill. So it's a fine balance, and you know, you're kind of operating a little bit in the dark because you've no pre-season and you haven't had, you know, those 5 or 6 challenge matches. You know, you will have the league, of course, but it's just so, like, it's happening so fast. It's going to be very tough to have that perfect team for July 4th, the way, you know, Limerick have whenever they have their opener.
Yeah, I suppose I would still look at the fact that unless some of those fringe guys prove that they're better than the old guys we mentioned, the old guys are still going to play. The older guys, I don't want to say they're old, but the experienced guys. Look, you can't. It'd be too rash to judge Keane Darcy, Dylan Quirk on last weekend. I fully expect them to get. We'll see plenty of them throughout the league. Like, I suppose it was just the way the game was going. Maybe they were thrown into the game against them, and it's very, very hard to pull back momentum when Limerick get going like that. You would think that maybe Mark Keogh would probably be well set to play against Cork. He would know a few of the younger Cork guys from under 21, under 20, even in college. Like, I would think another potential change would be maybe to rest Cathal Barrett. We know the last few years Cathal is, especially at the early part of the year, is very susceptible to hamstring problems. If Craig Morgan is ready to go, like Craig would know Jack O'Connor and Shane Barrett from underage level. So like, he's probably a perfect candidate maybe to go in there at cornerback and try himself out there. Look, you would think after the way Brian McGrath went last Sunday or last Saturday night, you stick with him again to build on his confidence. You mentioned Paddy Cadell. I think Paddy was going very, very well against Cork in the league last year. I think he got injured after about 20-25 minutes. As he hurled down in UCC as well. Probably will know a good few of their lads. So I'd like to say I'd love to see him getting a run too. I do think that we'll see chopping and change, and I know it'll be an element of the Tipp Sports, and we need to start to develop a pattern of play and maybe a settled 15. I don't think the management will be bothered with that. I think they'll want to expose as many players as possible in the first 4 games, and then you get to the last game against Waterford. And I think you have to go to Waterford anticipating that you're going to be playing Waterford in the Munster semi-final 3 weeks after that. I don't think either Liam Cahill or Liam Sheedy will see that as shadowbox, and I think they'll see it as the perfect opportunity to go hell for leather at each other, put your strongest team out. Okay, if Tipp end up maybe losing by a point or two with what they perceive to be the championship team at that stage, at least they would be showing, okay, what didn't work, maybe who wasn't maybe good enough, or what way were we not set up to beat the Waterford team now? We will in 3 weeks' time. I think definitely that June 13th game in Walsh Park. I think Tipperary have to go what they think is their strongest team at that stage. And look, whatever happens after that, happens after that. Because I just think you'd love to go to Waterford and put a marker down to say, look, this is what we are. If we lose, fine. We have time to address any problems for 3 weeks after that. If we win, we have the psychological upper hand in Waterford, and it'll be great. Like, I still think the next 2 or 3 weeks it'll be all about blood and guys. Say we used 20 last day. I think we'll probably see 5 or 6 starters change. We'll probably see the subs bench shuffled around as well. So I think after the Galway game we'd start to get an impression of where we stand. And just physically, I remarked and looking at Pádraig Maher and Nolan McGrath, I don't think I've ever seen them as lean as they were before. Like, they were always fit and powerful, but they really look like they've toned down a bit. But I suppose that Caroline has probably really got into them there in terms of trying to make them as lean and as fit as he possibly can, and hopefully more durable maybe than they were last year.
Yeah, you often hear Cristiano Ronaldo. Apparently, once he got to 30, every year after, he wanted to go down by a kilo every year. No doubt he was, like any good athlete, as lean as a butcher's dog. So it'd be great to see if they could have some big seasons. A tough balance, though, to try and give these players enough exposure in the next few weeks when games are coming thick and fast, and when you also want to have training matches as well, between lads not ending up injured but making sure you road test them enough for the championship. Because that Waterford game, assuming it's Waterford, it could be Clare, but you'd feel maybe not in light of losing to Antrim the other day. What a job Darren Gleeson is doing, the poor true man. But speaking of a Ballingarry man, Liam Cahill, that was a rough game against Cork for them, losing 5-22 to 127. And it looked far worse going into injury time, because they got 1-3 right before the end of the game to take some of the bad luck off it. Cork, with goals from Robbie O'Flynn, serious pace in him, one of many pacey Cork players. Jack O'Connor, Alan Connolly got 2, and then Shane Kingston comes off the bench and just looks like just a greyhound as well, a powerful greyhound. Cork look a little bit different, don't they? They look worryingly good all of a sudden.
Oh, look, I in some ways, like, you would be concerned, but in other ways, have we seen these false dawns from Cork before, early in the league, maybe getting a couple of big wins?
The sun will come up with them eventually, Shane.
Oh, look, there's no doubt some of those. Despite the fact that they lost those 2 All-Ireland finals to Tipp at under 20 and under 21 level, look, one match doesn't make a player bad or anything like that. Or look, they had some outstanding young talents. Like, they're going to come eventually. I think Cork will probably see this weekend as a game to maybe they need to back it up. Like, if they go to Thurles and maybe lose by a couple of points, I think, look, it could be the same old Cork again when they were expected to win, they flopped. So will Mark Coleman be 6 come the summer? Like Arif is given, we know what they can do. Like Jack O'Connor knows it's fine forward. Alan Connolly came on, looked good. Like Shane Kingston, as you say, was very, very good towards the end. But like, you still think that only for Shane Kingston's goal with 5 minutes to go, the third Cork goal, like, I think Waterford would have won that game. Like, I think they'd eaten a 9-point deficit down to 4, and they were motoring, like, and without actually hurling that well. And look, the heads dropped after the third goal went in. They conceded 3 very, very, or 2 more bad goals after, very soft goals, I would say. Look, you can probably have that, I suppose, a year. That's the first game back after losing an All-Ireland final, maybe a bit of a hangover. I don't think it's going to impact Waterford overly. I don't think they're going to worry about it too much, but maybe it highlighted the loss that Dara Fives and Tyg de Bourke are defensively, like especially de Bourke. Like, he just holds that centre back spot. He's the heartbeat of that team, and like, not having him for the whole championship year, I think it's going to come against them. I can't see them getting back to an All-Ireland final. I think going forward, they're still going to score heavily, but defensively they are a little bit they're weaker than they were this time last year.
Yeah, I have to say I'm interested to see how Tipperary approach this game. Because even if you jump back to last year, Cork's pace, and they generally have as much, if not more pace than anybody. And like you've mentioned, Dara Fitzgibbon, I mentioned Robbie O'Flynn, Shane Kingston, Jack O'Connor's a fast player. You can keep going through the team. And they have a few more players to come back with the bit of ignorance that you need to succeed in hurling. Like I think Colm Spillane is probably maybe one of the most underrated players, or people don't give him quite enough credit, because he's a pig back there, full back in a very positive sense. Owen Cadigan could still be very useful in there. I thought Damien Cahalan looked relatively good. He came off late in the game. Another physically big man, not to mention the cornerbacks, Niall O'Leary and Sean O'Donoghue. I don't know if it kind of stood out to you, but they look like tanks even more than ever before. So we've talked about Tipperary players looking leaner and meaner this year, hopefully. A couple of those Cork lads look in great shape as well. But I wonder, will Tipperary let this game become a shootout? Because Cork certainly have far more pace than Tipperary, I would say. I don't know if you feel the same way. If it becomes a very open game, that could play into Cork hands. Now, it often leads to just really high-scoring games where Tipperary are also putting up big scorelines. But Tipperary can't really afford to leave massive gaping chasms in the back.
No, I don't think they will let it turn into a shootout. But I think they'll look forward to the game more than they did last week. I think it's really physicality and work rate was the order of the day last week. That's not to say it won't be needed next week, but I think Cork will give you more opportunities to score. There'll be more scoring chances from open play. You probably will not have to start a forward line that includes Dan, Niall O'Mara, Bonner and Willie Connors. I think one, if not two of them, will be sacrificed maybe to get a bit more scoring in there. Say a Mark Keogh, a Cian Darcy, guys to come in maybe, and then I suppose guys that would maybe know the Cork guys from those recent under-21 campaigns, where they're weak, where they're strong. I think it's going to be an excellent game. There's no doubt about it. Look, I would have said the same the last few years, that when we're coming against Cork in the league or in the championship, that God, their pace, how are we going to do against them? And invariably, we've coped pretty comfortably when we're on it. Okay, the 2018 game in Thurles, they devoured us in the first half. But look, when Tipp decided to, enough of this, we're going out here to hurl, we destroyed Cork in the second half. 2019 down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, first game of the championship, we taught Cork a lesson, 7 points flattered us that day. Last year was a very, very open game of hurling in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Tipp lost by 2 points, which was nearly a turkey shoot. It really... Look, Tipp could have won by 2 points. Cork ended up winning by 2. Probably a couple of goals that night that Tipp conceded that they probably feel like that came against them. But look, I wouldn't. I don't think Cork's pace. Look, I think we've coped with it in the past. I think we'll do it so again. I don't think Tipp will be naive to allow Cork's forwards acres of space. I think we will retain an awful lot of maybe the good points we did from last weekend in terms of structure, in terms of if we can keep our defensive structure in place, maybe make sure that there's no pockets of space for Cork to play into. Cork won't have an awful lot of space maybe to get in for goal chances. And then this was the important thing for Tipp going the other way would be when we do have the ball, make sure there's movement in our forwards. And I suppose that was the one aspect maybe that we didn't have quality. I thought there was some half decent ball went in the second half against Limerick, but we were either beaten to it or some of that was nearly a more 60-40 that we weren't able to get into our hands, that Perry had have a look around. There was a couple of times where Willie Connors came in off his wing, and if there was probably a goal chance on if the ball came to hand for, I think he was trying to pick out Jake Morris, but it ended up missing him by about 5 yards. So look, you'd like to think the longer the year goes on, I think the sharper we should get in terms of how we're linking defence into attack.
Yeah, I know not to labour a point too much, but again, I'd like to see, now that Brian O'Mara is injured and that's a young player that's not going to be available for the next coming weeks, I'd again like to see Michael Breen tried in the back line. Didn't really work out for him in the forward line against Limerick. Well, obviously he started off midfield, went up to the forward line. And I think often in those tight games against those teams that keep space at a premium, it doesn't really suit him. I'd just love to see him facing the ball in the half back line. I think he could really drive the team on from there, and obviously he has the pace and power to cover any amount.
But I would say this is a Michael Breen game.
Well, it is
like
in the
he was
forward.
man of the match against Cork.
That's the
Cork
frustrating
tend to let you
part.
hurl. And he's still like Michael Breen. Like you think about Michael, probably I think he drove 2, if not 3 wides last weekend. Like, and probably 2 of them were probably like they were 70, 80 yards out, but they were in the middle of the field with nobody on him. He probably knows himself he should have scored them. Like, and he maybe if those go over, his confidence, like he is a confidence player. You'd like
He
to
is,
think
but
after
you know the way,
being
like sometimes he
named.
takes over a game. Like
Yeah.
let's say a few times we've seen it against Waterford and Cork and stuff like that. It doesn't really happen against, like, if you go over the years, Galway against Kilkenny, against Limerick now as well. I actually think if he was in the back line, there's a fair chance from let's say wing back, which I think is positionally the easiest place in hurling to play, and midfield is the most difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to know where is the home spot because it moves all the time. If he was put wing back, I think he could start dominating games against anybody.
Yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see would the management go that way. Like, you think in terms of having to play wing back, maybe with his skill set, it's probably well suited against Cork. Maybe having to deal with a Seamus Harnedy, maybe at 12, like you probably maybe where you need a bit of legs and stuff like that. Maybe rather, like Cork are not going to pump puck outs long down on top of the Tipperary half back line. They're just not going to do that. They're going to be working the ball up the field. So you probably need somebody with a leg to stay with Harnedy. So look, it definitely is. It's something worth experimenting, but I don't think the management see Breen back there, and I'd be surprised if he's played at 5 maybe this weekend.
Yeah, I'll probably stop going on about that. But people, like, get your comments in there on YouTube or on social media on the Nina Guardian. Let us know what you think and what you think of the team this weekend, who you'd like to see try it out, and so on and so forth. Very hard to even predict how you think this game will go this weekend, because from one week to the next, things could change massively. It even happens like that in the Munster Championship during the round robin in those couple of seasons as well. So it'd be harsh to ask you or me for a prediction.
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's no doubt it is. Like I think I did say last week that ideally you'd want to be winning maybe after the Galway game. You'd have 2 out of 3. So look, okay, we have a draw. So maybe you could afford maybe to lose 1. But look, I think Tipperary are very much a confidence momentum team. If we get a sort of an unbeaten run, confidence creeps into the team. Like you saw the All Ireland champions mentality last weekend, where Limerick were 5 points up. They never panicked. Like, if Tipperary went into that game as All Ireland champions, trying to blood a few more young lads, we might have had a bit more confidence maybe in the last 15 minutes to see it out. Maybe you would have had the younger guys maybe willing to try a bit more, maybe, or to have a bit more confidence, maybe to take a greater risk in possession, to try and find a guy in a better position, maybe to work a good scoring position. So look, I think if we get into a confident frame of mind, like I think there is probably a small bit of a hangover from last year. When we get into a confident frame of mind, get on an unbeaten run, like we won't be. I think we'll be heading into the summer in a good position.
Now we'll move on to talk about the Gaelic football team, and David Power's men, the Munster champions reigning, are returning to action this weekend. Now everyone knows it's a truncated league, so Tipperary will be operating in Division 3 South. So that includes Offaly, Wicklow and Limerick, who we start out against this weekend. Now I spoke with Michael Quinlivan in a press call on Tuesday, and I suppose he was somewhat positive, well, very positive about the year ahead, but there's no doubt that there are a few players that aren't going to be available this year that were last year. Liam Casey, he's away. I think it's understood he's going or gone to Australia. Philip Austin has retired. I don't think anyone expects Colin O'Riordan to be available this season. But Philip Ryan is coming in. But first of all, Liam Casey, now he's been an important player, and he got a goal in the Munster semi-final against Limerick last year, got a couple of points against Cork, which proved crucial as well. So the importance of his loss, that it'll probably be felt, won't it?
It probably will. I guess you'd have to throw Colin O'Riordan into that mix as well. Because Tipperary had a very physical midfield stroke half forward line last year. Like you had Stephen O'Brien there as well. You had Conal Kennedy. Like we had you had 4 big men out there, and like 2 of them are gone. And I suppose you'd probably hope that I suppose if last year had gone to plan worldwide, Liam Casey wouldn't have been there either, like, because he was due to go. Of course, he was held back at home. Got his Munster medal. I suppose in that Munster finally kicked 2 terrific points. But like then in the All Ireland semi-final, things didn't really go for him, and like he came off at half time. I suppose he get that poor back pass that ended up, I think, in Mayo's third goal. So he definitely, a lot like Michael Breen for the hurlers, he blows very hot and cold. When he's good, he's very good. When he's quiet, he can be. He doesn't offer an awful lot. So look, there's no doubt we're short in the middle of the field. But as David Power said a few weeks ago, like Stephen O'Brien, like he did his hamstring a couple of times last autumn. Like, and even in the Munster final and the All Ireland semi final, he was far from 100%. He's got a good pre-season under his belt. Jack Kennedy, who missed the Munster final and the All Ireland semi final through injury, like he was a huge loss. Like he's a fantastic footballer. He's there now. So look, there's no doubt we're a bit short in terms of that long range kick out. If we have to go along, but I just think. I think still think we're better set up going into this year's league, even without those couple of guys. Because look, we're Munster champions. If you can't take the confidence from that, like when are you ever going to get confidence from to take the thing to the next level? Like, from speaking to a good few people behind the scenes, like they've come back in good fettle. Like, they're physically stronger. I think they're mentally stronger. I think Conor Sweeney mentioned in a interview we did a few weeks ago, like he said they need to take an arrogance from what they did last year, and like not a bad arrogance, but a good arrogance, that they know that when the ball is thrown in next weekend against Limerick, that okay, they will respect Limerick. Limerick beat them 2 years ago. They probably should have beaten them in the Munster semi-final last year. They know the challenge is going to be a total one, but they know that, look, when Tipperary go out in the field next week, they'll know, look, if we get on the front foot and get the match played in our terms, Limerick shouldn't get within 5 or 6 points of them. And I suppose that's not being cocky, but I think they need to go into that frame of mind where, look, we need to set the terms of engagement here. They need to, I suppose, they're going to have to wear the favourites tag this year in their 3 matches in the league, and they're going to have to get used to it and just get on with it, like, and not go into games with maybe the pressure being off before they finally decide to show their best, like, and hopefully they will do that. Like, I think there's not going to be scope for experimentation, and for Tipp and this league, they need to get promoted. Like, there's going to be very little scope. Like, they have to win at least 2 of their 3 group games to get to a league semi-final, and then league semi-final that's the key one. You win your league semi-final, you're promoted. Like, so I don't foresee massive changes to the Tipperary team. As you mentioned, Philip Ryan, will be interested to see how he goes. Under 21 All-Ireland winner from Dublin. He won a senior championship medal with Dublin in 2015 on the extended panel. Look, if you're getting in the 30-36 man range in Dublin at any stage the last 5 years, you have to be a serious footballer. If he gels in quickly into that forward line with Quinlivan and Sweeney, I suppose you mentioned Quinlivan, like, he had no pre-season last year. He came into the championship cold. Like, apart from the Munster final, he was pretty ineffective in the other 3 matches. So if you Mike fully fit Michael Quinlivan with a good pre-season behind him, motivated, like, that's effectively a new player coming into that Tipperary forward line this year. And if we get Sweeney, Quinlivan and another, maybe it's Liam Boland, Philip Ryan or whoever firing, like, we'll put up big scores against a lot of teams.
Yeah, I've seen St. Bridget's, his club in Dublin, Philip Ryan's club. I've seen them play a few times over the years. Now, they're gone backwards as a club. They won a Leinster club title, I'd say, about a decade ago at this stage. So they were a very, very strong team. They're not that way so much anymore. He is a good player. Like, he has a few scores in him. I just haven't seen him quite as much in recent years, but he's definitely going to be an addition. And it's someone that Michael Quinlivan, he said in that press call that he has been impressed at how he's been going in the last few weeks. And of course, if he gels in and he fits in, he obviously has relations down in Tipperary as well, which I think that obviously going to help him kind of gel in a little bit more. You kind of feel a bit more legitimately part of it when you have that sort of background. So hopefully he hits the ground running. It's definitely a good thing in terms of if you want to continue to climb up the ladder, and like that's twice in the last 5 years now that Tipperary have gotten to All-Ireland semi-finals. And something that Quinlivan said is that, they were expecting the challenge they got off Mayo. They knew they were a quality team, but still you can't quite prepare for that level of intensity when you're not against it all the time. like if you're operating down in Division 3, you're not playing against the likes of, like a Mayo, who've just gotten relegated to Division 2, but they're a Division 1 quality team. They got to an All-Ireland final after all. Even Cork were a Division 3 team last year as well. It's not quite that same level. And Tipperary were quite fortunate really to have a side of the Division 3 draw that includes Offaly, Limerick and Wicklow, rather than your pick of Cavan, Derry, Fermanagh, Longford, who are in the North draw. Like, that would be a tougher challenge. I think Tipperary, do you think that, like, David Power is coming in thinking, right, getting promoted here or finishing top of this is a must?
Oh, I think it's a must, but I think I think they have to embrace that. Like, they can't go out thinking that it's like they will respect Limerick, they'll respect Wicklow, they'll respect Offaly, but look, if like they've got to embrace the fact that they've got to be beating these teams. They've got to win at least 2 out of 3. Like, ideally, you win all 3 and you go into that semi-final with a bit of momentum. And look, ideally, look, you're looking ahead to the Munster Championship, 10th of July, and look, in all likelihood, bar another massive shock, you're probably expecting Kerry to be the opponent. And look, if as defending champions, like, to have any chance of upsetting Kerry in a Munster semi-final, you have to be carrying in decent momentum from the league, and I think anything but maybe promotion would, like, if ideally you want to be going into a Munster semi-final with promotion attained, it means you'll have won 3 if not 4 games in the league, and that's decent momentum to carry into the summer. And we see the type of players Tipperary have. We're ball players, when the top of the ground is good, like, we'll be very effective. Like, you have Bill Maher, Robbie Kiley bursting out of defence. I think one player who he came on in the All-Ireland semi-final, Paddy Feehan, he got a cracking goal. Like, I think he's one guy that, like, I loved him from under 20 a few years ago. I think he's a great bit of stuff, like breaking forward. He'll be willing to break tackles and get through. Like Brian Fox is the hero. It's good to see that there wasn't too many retirements. Like, Philip Austin's the only one that did retire. It's good to see that the core group is still there. Hopefully, you'll see a few more guys breaking through, the likes of, like, Rian Quigley and Sean O'Connor. That in the early stages of last year's league, I thought they were very promising. I suppose they're 2021. They were probably a year older. Another year of S&C will have stood to them. Like, Conor Ryan from Lochmore Castleiney was probably one of the players of the club championship last year, but, like, he was very, very light, and he's a fabulous forward, very good scoring forward. He probably needed to bulk up over the winter. If he's done that, that will stand to him too. So look, I think we're in a decent position. Like, I think if you lose this weekend, it's a poor place to start with. But I think it's, in terms of the 3 game, I think it's the ideal start playing Limerick in Limerick, because look, they're forewarned about how good Limerick are. They won't fear them, but, like, Limerick gave Tipp a bit of roasting in the Munster Championship 2 years ago in Thurles. Last year, they played some brilliant football in that first half. They were 6 points up at half time before Tipp got things together in the second half. I think Tipp went 2 points up, but then Limerick had a chance to win it at normal time with a 45 and went wide. That was after Conor Sweeney had scored a worldie of a free from the opposite wing. Look, I just know the challenge that's coming. They're going to go down there fully tuned into what Limerick have. I just remember David Power saying in the recent press evening we did with him that he takes some of the blame for what happened last year in that Munster semi-final, where between the Clare game the previous Sunday and playing Limerick on the following Saturday, 6 days, to train twice. He says, in hindsight, you think that was too much. They probably should have just trained once, because I suppose that Clare game took a lot out. It was played in soft conditions. Like, lads were probably pretty fatigued. It was their 3rd Sunday in a row if you add their 2 league games the previous to that, so they were probably coming in a little bit stale. So look, I think they really should be well prepared this weekend to take on Limerick. I remember and I suppose they're sort of in the same frame of mind as they were. I remember teams coming back after the first lockdown last year, having to play the 2 league games before the championship. They're sort of in that same zone now where they were then, where they had to play, I think, was it Offaly and Leitrim at the back end of last year's league when they came back, and they had to hit the ground running, and they did. So, and they played that first game against Offaly. They played very, very well in hurlers. Like, they played some lovely football. Won narrowly, but they missed an awful lot of chances. They probably should have won 6-7 points. That if they're fresh and firing, they had a couple of challenge matches last weekend against Waterford, particularly Kildare, and that Kildare match should have set them up nicely for this weekend, you would think.
Yeah, and you'd hope it's just going to be a year of progression, because after the All-Ireland semi-final back in 2016, it was all positive, and then, a couple of the players that, like Peter Atchison went away, and you'd just be hoping that it isn't going to be a repeat now where it's a year forward, the likes of Liam Casey steps away, you don't have Colin O'Riordan, that there'll be a backward step as well. You just want to see the team continuing to kick on. And obviously, we don't know how the team is going at the moment, but hopefully we'll get some positive vibes this weekend. Also this weekend is the Tipperary Camogie team going to be away to Cork down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. That's Saturday at 2:00. It's a Camogie team that's we'll come back to the issues about the calendar and all that in a little while. I'll read out that statement. But after losing 3 All-Ireland semi-finals in a row, what would be the aim for Bill Mullaney this year?
I'd say it has to be. I think it has to be to get to at least one of the national finals, if not two. I suppose last year they were very unfortunate with COVID. I suppose firstly, when the first lockdown came in March, they had qualified for the National League final for the first time, I think, in about 14 or 15 years. And that would have been a massive occasion for Tipperary. It would have felt like a step up. You would have been playing live on TV. You would have been playing in Croke Park. And I thought they missed out on that experience of playing in a national final, that sort of an occasion. So, look, I think they're going to get that. They missed out on that. Then you got to the championship, and then you get to the knockout stages. They ran into injury trouble with Nicole Walsh, Arena Friday, and I suppose Aisling Maloney at that time. She showed up well in the first game against Clare. She picked up an injury in the ladies' football match against Monaghan. So, look, she missed out, and I suppose unfortunately she made the decision that she's going to focus solely on ladies football this year. But look, Tipperary know that they have. I suppose they weren't overly. I suppose they hadn't been used to her completely last year, so it's not a huge loss. But I think in terms of this year, they have to. I think making a league final and winning an All-Ireland semi-final has to be their aim, and I don't think they're going to shy away from that either. I think they've taken gradual steps forward, but they need to take a big step this year, and hopefully they'll. And I think beating Cork, Cork have tended to have their number the last 5 to 10 years. If they could beat Cork in their own backyard, I think that would be a great statement of intent for the year ahead.
Yeah, Cork, Galway and Kilkenny have been the main teams in the last few years. And just even looking at the record books, it is a long time since Tipperary have won an All-Ireland, like 2004 and 2005 and 6, when last in All-Ireland finals. It is a long, long time away, and sometimes history can kind of weigh heavily on your shoulders too. So the All-Ireland semi-final last year, it's not that I thought that Tipperary didn't have the hurling in them to win that game. I actually thought early on in the game that Tipperary looked quite good, but just couldn't quite get the scores on the board. It is going to take, it's going to take a bit of a jump to make that extra kind of step this year.
Oh, it is, but I think in terms, if you were to say, if there was two areas that Tipp improved on last year, I thought defensively they were excellent. I think on average in their 4 championship matches they conceded about 1-9, 1-10. If you can concede that little, you're going to win an awful lot of games. I think they definitely got that sorted out with Mary Ryan going to full back, won an All-Star. Karen Kennedy at centre back, won an All-Star. Anya Slattery was defined last year, 18 years of age. In goals, won an All-Star. So look, if you have 3 of your back 7 as All-Stars, you're doing something right there. I think the weakness last year, as it has been for a few years, is up front. They're heavily reliant on Cotavan, and look, it's easy for opposition teams to try and shut her down. You'd go a long way to maybe curb and Tipp scoring threat. So I think if you get Nicole Walsh back there at Arena Friday back there, Sarah Friday should be a year back. Like, she did her cruciate late 2019, probably was chasing her fitness and form last year. If she's back to 100%, she'll be a huge improvement on that, for that addition to that forward line as well. So, and hopefully maybe a Clodagh McIntyre from my own club in Laura. She was about 19 last year. She's a bit older. Grace O'Toole from Newport Ballinhinch. So, like, there's talent there to come through, and you would hope that they're a year older, a year stronger. Like Angelo Walsh from Borrisolee is in there in S&C. We saw what he did with Borrisolee for the few years he was there. Dennis Kelly from Toomevara via Borrisolee through Templemore, the school there. Like, he's a fantastic coach as well. So it just shows you Bill Manani has gone for a bit more experience in terms of his background. He's freshened it up with Angelo and Dennis Kelly. Like, we're going all out for it. And look, they don't know themselves. Like, there's no excuses this year. They're not going to shy away from the fact that if they don't get to an All-Ireland final, I think it'll be a disappointment.
And there was obviously a lot of talk and consternation about the rule, or sorry, not the rule changes, but the calendar for this year. But you know, and it was like the vote was actually very, very tight. So I'm just going to read out the press release that came through during the week from the Camogie Association, and it reads like this: the Camogie Association has confirmed that the poll of clubs which took place over the last few days is concluded. The response of clubs was positive, with 62% of clubs returning a vote. 53% of those clubs voted for option 2, with 47% 53% for option 2, with 47% for option 1. This means that the Camogie Association will now run the 2021 Intercounty Championships after the National League, which starts this weekend, followed by the Club Championship competition after that. So it feels a little bit like common sense has prevailed. I mean, even as a club player on the men's side of things, this idea of having your life turned upside down because you don't know when stuff is going to happen, and you're waiting for clubs to finish, or for a county to finish, so that you can play for your club and that kind of thing. There's a bit more certainty there. So, but it was a very, very tight vote all the same.
Yeah, it was very tight, and I wasn't surprised. And I think the Camogie Association were hoping that maybe the grassroots would bail them out, and that they would say, okay, the grassroots were actually justified our initial decision to maybe go with the club championships during the summer and the intercounty at the back end. And I suppose maybe try and put the intercounty players on the back foot. And like, I hate to see this turn into a club versus intercounty debate. It's not. It was never a club v intercounty debate in terms of maybe the player. It was the players kicking up. And I know 84% of the Camogie players wanted the intercounty league followed by the intercounty championship followed by club. It wasn't that they wanted it that way, but they saw the potential problems that were going to creep up, not once but twice, if the Camogie Association got the way. First, if you played the club Camogie Championship during the summer, that would be up against the ladies intermediate Camogie Championship. And you look at you have Roisin Howard from Care, who's on the ladies football squad. How is Roisin supposed to play Club Camogie with Care at the same time? How is Sarah Friday, who's on the intermediate, the senior ladies football squad, supposed to play senior Camogie with Clonalty or Rossmore at the same time? And then you go to the back end of the year where the Camogie Intercounty Championship is on, and at the same time you're expecting you'll have the ladies football club championship going on in Tipperary, and you're going to have exactly the same issue. I just think it was so short-sighted, but in some ways it wasn't surprising to see the Camogie do what they did. And I know there was a lot of anger from a lot of the clubs that had been told that the unfinished 2020 provincial and Ireland club championships would have been played. They were going to be prioritised, and I think that was some of the reason why they wanted to play the club championship during the summer. But then that was another Camogie Association decision last year, going off and doing their own thing. There was going to be no provincial and All-Ireland club championships. I don't know, there was disappointment talking in Killadangan that they would have loved to have tested themselves in Munster against the Napiershicks and the Silk Smile Bridges and the Valley Gunners. But look, they knew for the greater good, like it wasn't possible. The Ladies Football Association didn't play an All-Ireland club championship last year. But Camogie Association decided, look, no, even though the restricted time frame, no, we're going to play our club championship as normal. And the fairness, they got down to the county championship. So, like, why did they think last year that they could get a club championship in and Munster and All Ireland, and J and Lady Football didn't? And of course, this year their initial plan was to go against what the GA and ladies football were doing in terms of going with the split season. They decided, no, we're going to do something else. And how they didn't think that there was going to be kickback from certain aspects of areas of the association. Look, they almost got bailed out. It wouldn't have taken an awful lot. Like, I think they said only 67% of the clubs responded. Like, so look, if you got a few more clubs that responded and turned it the other way, like, you could have had chaos. You could have had the National League starting this weekend with a boycott. Like, I think the intercounty players would have carried out that boycott. Well, even though the poll said this is the way the clubs voted, you got to go. You got to go with what's there. But like, I just think it's averted so much chaos. And like, I know there's, from reading a few things on Twitter, like there's a few people saying, particularly the clubs that were involved in Munster and All Ireland clubs, like Thurles, Sarsfields, Drum and Inch, that were still involved. That God, it's the intercounty wagging their tail again. I don't think that's the case. I know there's disappointment there, but like, I just think it's averted so much potential trouble during the summer, not just once but twice. And look, I just think the right decision has been made here. I know it means the club championships in Camogie will be back to August, September time, but look, that's going to be the same situation that the men's teams are going to find themselves in. I saw one comment there yesterday about, God, Camogie Gold Clare players are going to have to be driving from Dublin and Galway when they're back in college. They're going to have to be driving back in the middle of the week for training. Jesus, me and you have been doing it for 25 years. Like, you probably did it when you were hurling still for Bursley. I did it when I was hurling bad junior B for Laura. Like, I came back from Galway and I came back from Limerick Tuesday, Wednesday nights for training. It had to be done. Like, I suppose Camogie players, ladies football players, probably just have to buy into the fact that that's the way it's going to have to be. And look, I know that they say we won't get venues to play our matches in the autumn winter. You will. Like, just look, the GA can't be seen to be locking ladies teams out of training fields in August just to maybe put in their own senior, intermediate, junior teams for training. That can't happen. Like, the GA are going to get hammered for that if it does. Look, I think things will work themselves out. But I think long term, I don't know how you think, Shane. I just think it was the right decision has been reached.
Yeah, I think so too. And just before we run out of time, I'm just going to quickly run over some of the rule changes that we're going to see in Camogie, and I think some of these aren't before time. So I'll just run through them here. This is from the Instagram page of the Camogie Association. So a new rule on contact: a player may use minimal contact on an opponent's body from side on once they are making a reasonable effort to gain possession of the ball. I'm moving on to I'm after going on to the wrong one there altogether. Yeah, I'm not sure what I've done wrong there now, but I'll be able to go through them on my phone here. Dropping the hurley and the hand pass goal, so that's gone now as well. A free from the hand: a player may choose to take a quick free from the hand if they're fouled inside their own 45. The new playing rule on the penalty 20-metre free: it must be struck on or outside the 20-metre but not inside it. In addition, only one player may stand on the goal line. Persistent fouling, that's going to end up in the first instance a noting by the referee. Second offence, yellow. Third offence, second yellow will be shown followed by a red. Quick puck out, so restart the game following a wide. The referee will blow the whistle to signal a wide, and the player, at that point the sliotar is back in play and the goalkeeper is free to restart. And so that's kind of the height. I think, Shane, in a lot of cases, a lot of those are common sense and ones that players have been looking for a number of years.
Absolutely, like there's no doubt about it. I just, in case, I'm going to say my battery's running a bit low, so in case we get cut off, but I'm holding the charger to it here. But like, I in some ways, I don't think it went far enough. Like, I know that they came a long way forward in what they were trying to do, but I just think they could have gone a bit further in terms of allowing a bit more physicality. Because look, the level of especially at intercounty, like the girls are putting in as much gym work as a lot of the boys are, but they're not allowed to show that in terms of their physicality. Like, when we're seeing the last few years, like, Camogie matches were turning into a bit of a free fest. I know we had a very good All-Ireland final last year, so hopefully maybe things are turning around in that respect. And I suppose not seeing the hand pass goal going, I suppose I think we're all glad to see that. Like, I didn't think there was an awful lot of skill in that. So, like, there's no doubt about it. Camogie Association in terms of rule changes did take a huge step forward in terms of that. And I did think in terms of allowing a bit more physicality, they have some way to go. But you'd be looking forward to seeing how the game will develop over the next 12 months or so.
So just before we finish up there, Shane, big weekend coming for Tipperary. Any final thoughts before we finish up?
Yeah, no, it is going to be an exciting one, I suppose. I said all 3 games are on Saturday. I suppose just to say, like the Camogie match is live on the Camogie Association's YouTube page. Tipperary against Limerick in the football is on GAA Go, and like the hurling matches on RT. So like it's great to have all these platforms. You don't feel that you're missing out. Like you're covered all day Saturday from 2 o'clock till probably about 9 o'clock. You can be watching the blue and gold, and like we'll have it all covered in the Nina Guardian next week, and we'll be reviewing it all in the TippCast next week. And I suppose just to thank our viewers last week and our listeners. Like it was a fantastic first show, and if anybody wants to get involved with the show as a sponsor, or if you want to leave a comment on the YouTube page, we'll be glad to hear your feedback. And hopefully as the year goes on, we'll get guests on, and there will be a few live shows where we interact with our guests as well. And hopefully Shane will learn from this week and have his...
And have the phone plugged in next week. Okay, brilliant
stuff,
Shane.
Have the phone fully charged for next week. Yeah. So...
Okay, we'll leave it there. Welcome to TippCast by the Nina Guardian.